This is a Mesa 3-channel solo head. As you can hear from the white noise, the output is working fine. But I'm going into clean channel, channel A, and I've got the master for that channel up all the way, and I've got the output, the global master up all the way, and I've got the volume for this channel about 10 o'clock. Just a little bit of bleed. If I go to the other channels, it's the same. It's just a little bit of bleed. And because the other channels have so much gain, they do try to amplify that bleed, and it sounds grainy and horrible. Now, the amplifier came in with the problem description, loses power, which is not quite the same as what it's doing. It's losing signal, not power. And let me put this in standby and show you a measurement. What happens in this amp is the signal comes in and it goes to V1A, and then it splits off to two different volumes for this channel and this channel. And I guess the third channel too. Does that do that there? Yeah, so you got channel 1 gain is one split, channel 2 and channel 3 is another split. We're in channel 1. And then the wiper of whichever one of those 3 channel volumes is selected, which would be this wire in this case, is fed to V2B. There's our V2A's grid. So don't do this at home, poking around measurements inside amps that are powered on, even in standby. But from the wiper to that grid, I've got 69.6 ohms, which makes sense. There's a 470K resistor in series from that grid to the point that the relay selects after that. But in this case, there's this transistor which shorts out that that 470K resistor when it's in the clean channel. It uses that 470K resistor for the higher gain stuff. So that's a good thing. But what I'm also seeing here at the same point on the clean channel, from that grid to ground in the amp, .4K. Now that's with that channel volume all the way up. I should be measuring 1 meg there to ground. 6K. If I lower the gain pot more, it's going to go down to nothing. 91 ohms with the gain volume pot at 0. If I put that at 10, and that is a 1 meg pot in parallel with the tone stack. So let's say 100K for each. 1 meg, probably 200 something K would be a normal reading from this grid to ground. But it's ever getting about 2.3K now. It was 6K, now it's 2.2K. What I suspect it probably is, where's my little pointer, is this capacitor right here, which just goes from V2A to ground. And that capacitor is a, where is it on the schematic? A 20 picofarad cap. 20 picofarad is not going to do a whole lot either way as far as the sound. But if that cap is bad, and these little ceramic discs in Mesas do like to go bad, that's a great place to short out to ground or partially short. So I'm going to remove that cap and see if the sound comes back. I've already verified it's not the tubes. Okay, with that cap out of the way, we no longer have that partial short at the grid of V2A, but we do have a weird behavior. Let me turn the master down so this isn't too loud. If I measure the input of V1B, which is the next place the signal goes, I hear it. It's nice and loud. I'm measuring a grid here in terms of DC, and I have no DC on it. If I measure the grid of V2A, I have very low level, but I've got half a volt on it. What's really weird about that is that there is no voltage on the input of the volume pot, which is feeding it. Well, it depends on where the pot is set. If I set halfway, there's no voltage on the input of that pot, and there's no voltage on the tone stack stuff, so there's not a leaking cap in the tone stack feeding that volume. But on that wiper of that pot, there's 0.5 volt, and there's a loss of sound. Now on the cathode of that same tube, we've got 2.2 volts. Let me look at the schematic on that. I think that's pretty normal. It says 2 volts. But that 2 volts is supposed to be above the cathode, which is supposed to have 0 volts. Sorry, above the grid. And since there's voltage present at the grid, that's going to throw off the biasing of this tube. And I think that's what's happening where we have no signal there. What's weird to me is I've swapped out different tubes. It's not the tube that's in V2. And I don't have an explanation as of yet for where that 0.5 volt is coming from. It could be leaking through this transistor, which is across the 470K in series with it, and then it's connected to a 10 volt supply within the amp. It could also be in one of these relays that the signal goes through between those points. Let's see. Yeah, relay 1B is where the signal goes. So it goes from that wiper on that treble pot, volume pot rather, through relay 1B, then through a 475K resistor, which is right here, which is bypassed in this case by this transistor, and then to the grid. Had that cap to ground. That's where we were losing a lot of stuff before. We're not losing that now, but we've got positive voltage on there, and it's not as loud as it should be. You heard that there because I didn't have the other end of this lead set to ground, so I was just injecting a noise antenna. So this grid, actually that's a good test. That shows me that this grid is amplifying pretty much at the same as the other grids. Once you factor in, see, we're losing it here. If I measure this grid, I don't have that. That's because we're losing signal right before this grid. So now I know we're not losing this grid through that failed cap to ground. And if I can get the signal healthy to this point, we'll have sound. So somewhere between here and that volume pot. So is it relay 1B? Is it the transistor? I don't know, but I know it's a lot less expensive for me to temporarily lift a leg or two on that transistor and find out. So that's what I'm going to do. Because if it's a relay, I've got to pull this entire board to get to that other side, and the repair costs a lot more. So let's see if it may just be a leak in that transistor. Transistor out. Let's measure voltage there at V2A again. We just had 0.5 volt and no sound. No voltage, loud sound. Let's see if the signal's back with the guitar now. Good sign. Let's see. Amp's noisy, but well, I've got good news and bad news. I have solved one layer of problem. I've solved one problem, but not all of them. So let's go. What's up with this loop thing here? I'm gonna get this loop bypassed, which I think when you bypass the loop, it also bypasses the global master. Which, for my purposes, makes things a lot simpler. So here I'm on channel 1, and I've got hiss when the master's halfway, and it almost goes away when the master's at full. That's not a good behavior, and there's some noise to it. That may be a bad pot. So yeah, let's dime that channel master. We're still not getting the full output of this amp. Why is that? What a weird thing in terms of switching. I'll figure it out one day. Again, with the noisy behavior, if I turn it down, let's try the next channel. So it's just the master on channel 1 that's really funky at this point. So I'll see what's going on with that, and see what other levels to this, layers to this onion there are. But it's a very noisy amp in general. But it's a lot better now that there's actual signal being amplified. What a long and drawn out thing, and I'm not even done with this. Why is that master volume on the clean channel so damn noisy? Alright, time for me to roll tubes.